Baseball season in the world is finally underway. We'll tell you what happened in Japan, Korea, and Taiwan as opening day happened in all three of those countries. And Liam Lawson is officially out with Red Bull. He has been demoted. We'll tell you what that means for the grid at the Japanese Grand Prix this weekend. And stay tuned for a special update on European hockey. All this and more on this week's edition of the International Sports Report. Hello and welcome to this edition of the International Sports Report, wherever you are in the world. So we're just kicking back and talking sports with you. Thanks for taking the time to tune into the International Sports Network, and we're going to get you all up to speed on what you missed in the week of world sports. My name is Marshall Lamert. Matthew Giesecke is alongside me, back after a week off for a very important and justifiable reason. One more emphatic congratulations to you and your newly minted beautiful wife.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into it, man. Hopefully you enjoyed the week off because the grind never stops. Our top stories today, before we get into scores, standings, and our games of the week and all that good stuff, we had Liam Lawson. Talked about this last week. He has officially been demoted down to Racing Bulls. We got a Christian Horner quote for you, team principal of Red Bull, if you didn't already know, saying in an interview with Sky Sports F1, I was very clear with him. It's a sample of 2 races. I think we've asked too much of you too soon. MG, let me ask you, is he right about that?
I would agree with that assessment. It's very tough to judge him based on 2 races partnered with Max Verstappen driving that absolute lemon of a Red Bull car.
No, you have no idea the joy it gives me to hear you say that phrase, lemon and Red Bull in the same sentence. It's been a struggle. It's been a struggle, but you're absolutely right. The devil's advocate side of that is we have seen Lawson already in spurts at the top level. Obviously, he's never started a season before. But
Sure.
I mean, what does that say? I mean, is that enough of a sample size to judge him, or maybe is just this pressure of succeeding Checo Perez, who was there for several years, and maybe just not really having the results that he needed to, this pressure to perform alongside, as you mentioned, Max Verstappen, that might be
Yeah.
getting into his head a little bit. I mean, is this really enough of a sample size, is what I want to know.
It's very tough because I think he had 11 Grand Prix under his belt before
Something
this
like that,
season.
yeah.
Um, I mean, you throw anyone in the partner seat with Max Verstappen, especially a near rookie.
Yeah.
That's a
Rookie.
lot to live up to.
It is, and hopefully this isn't really going to damage his potential too much. Because I mean,
Oh, I
I
hope
like the
not.
kid. He's
Yeah.
talented. He's got a lot of spirit, and I think he could really be in this circuit for a little while. But I mean, I guess the solution and the segue to that is who do you get to partner Max Verstappen? You do it with somebody who's done it before. Yuki Tsunoda is officially stepping into that seat, the man that everybody kind of expected would be the replacement for
Yes.
Checo Perez. And so far, with his results this season, he has been getting some marvelous mileage out of that Racing Bulls machine. And now he's upgrading, maybe, to a
Maybe.
slightly better or a slightly better Red Bull machine. And I mean, what scenes for Suzuka. He comes home for his home race in his first race back in the
Yeah.
Red
You
Bull
seen
first
the
year.
Red Bull livery for
I
Japan?
know. It's ugh. I I hope he succeeds. I really do. Maybe that third step on the podium, but no higher than that. No higher than that. We'll get into the talk of the Japanese Grand Prix a little bit later on
Oh yeah,
in the show. But top story number two, news coming out today from select outlets, most of them very respectable, including Foot Mercado and Yahoo Sport, that this contract circus we talked a little bit about last week with Virgil van Dijk might finally be coming to an end, as word coming out that Mohamed Salah is on the edge of a 2-year contract extension with Liverpool. Richard Hughes finally stopped sniffing his own behind and gave the man an offer that he deserves, and we can move on a little bit to the league chase, but nothing official announced yet. MG, what do you think this means? Obviously, you've caught a little bit of research in on this, and the question of Alexander Arnold, the question of Van
of
Dijk,
course.
circling around this team like a hornet's nest, like crocodiles or sharks or whatever kind of predatory metaphor you want to use, all season long. And then they drop out of the Champions League, and you're starting to think, is this really starting to affect the form of this team? So, with news like this maybe coming out and more to come in even maybe hours, what do you think this means for their title chances?
I Liverpool losing the title at this point would be historic collapse.
I hate to say it's happened before.
Liverpool has been here before. I am well aware of this fact. But even then, they're 9 points clear with a game in hand over Arsenal. I can't see. I can't see this going anyway, but the title to Mersey.
Good heaven, I do hope you're right. Without further ado, my friend, for your first time here on this show, let's get into the grind, shall we?
Absolutely.
We'll start in the baseball leagues in NPB to get things rolling for us. The Giants started out the season mighty strong at home. They blew the Swallows out and carried on their momentum against Chunichi. They are in front of Central League 3-1. Equal to them are the Bay Stars, close behind. Not really much surprising in the early going of the season. Hanshin, middling form between them and the Carp, and they also dropped a few games mid-week, but they have an opportunity to turn things around that we're going to be telling you about in the games of the week section. Dragons, Carp, and Swallows lagging behind. Swallows still missing out on their first win of the season as of today, April the 2nd of 2025. MG, what do we got going on in the Pacific League?
In first, the Pacific League, we've got the Lotte Marines. 3 wins to start the season, followed by the Nippon Ham Fighters, 3-1. The Oryx Buffaloes, surprising a lot of us, coming in third place to start the season. Following them is Rakuten, and then SoftBank, and closing it out, looking for their first win of the season as well, are the Cebu Lions.
Yeah, not much of a surprise at the bottom of the table. As much as I'm flying the flag here, I'm starting to feel like Waterloo at this point for this team, but it is what it is. It's a young core, and they're going to be spending a lot of time maturing. But you're absolutely right. Oryx absolutely blowing everybody away to start the season. I have to eat my hat. Well played to Hiroya Miyagi, who looks like a pretty perfect ace to start the year. He took a perfect game into the 8th inning in his first contest of the season against the Eagles. But the Fighters are leading the way in just really impressive stuff. Top to bottom, This is a really talented young hitting core. Their pitchers are doing their bit, and I don't think it's going to last very long, this Lotte League. But swiftly onwards into the KBO. The LG Twins remain in front, just one loss on the season for them. They continue to dish out blowouts like it is their job, and it definitely is. And it's always a funny metaphor to use when we're talking about athletics. But Samsung just behind them, 6-3, Wiz 5-3. They are really impressing to start the season as well. Landers tied with them at 5-3, and the Heroes are out of the basement very quickly, 4-5. How long will that last, though? And then down to the bottom of the table, Eagles and Bears. That's a little expected. I did think this Bears team was going to start the season a little hotter than they did. But down there in 8th, the Kia Tigers, where did their offense go? Just not really a great start for the season for them at all. Taking it into CBPL, the Uni Lions remain in front. They won all 3 of their games over the weekend, and then rain has swept through Taiwan and canceled a good chunk of the ball games that could have happened over the course of this week. But new series getting started today as we are recording this. Dragons just behind them, behind the Guardians as well, who have looked very impressive in a small sample size. We'll see if they can carry on their form from spring training. Brothers Monkeys and Hawks rounding things out in the CBPL. Now, MG, it gets very interesting. But we're talking about football starting in the Premier League. That is a look at things. And when we ask about Liverpool's title chances, that game in hand is looking like it could really get them some mileage. Only 1 defeat still so far this season. They are, as we are recording this, taking on the Everton Toffees over at Goodison Park, and we will see if they can get the job done. But again, these standings are as of Wednesday, since we are recording this. Arsenal still behind, and it doesn't really look like anybody's going to catch this team, MG.
I don't think so.
But if you had to give an award to the form that any of these teams is having, like kind of a surprise team, if you like, this Forest team has completely blown me out of the water all season long. No one really expected that, but Chris Wood, I mean, he's in his mid-30s, and he's one of the best goal scorers on the island of Britain right now. It's phenomenal. It's wonderful.
Forest have been outstanding, and it breaks my Leicester heart to say that.
Oh, yeah, and there it is. There's MG's Foxes down towards the bottom of the table. They are in the relegation zone, but one result might be enough to pull them out of it. We will have to see if they can establish some rhythm towards the end of the season. Checking in the Netherlands, Ajax remain in front by 9 points after, in our game of the week, they were able to get the better of PSV Eindhoven in what might have been the league. So we will have to see what happens. PSV taking on Groningen this week. Utrecht and Feyenoord down in 3rd and 4th. AZ lurking in 5th. We're going to be talking about AZ imminently. But that is the situation in the Netherlands. In the bottom 3, Willem II, RKC Waalwijk, and Almere City. No change in the bottom of the table up to this point. Over in Serie A, probably the most fascinating title race in all of world football so far. Inter remains in front, followed by Napoli and Atalanta. Bologna in 4th, Juventus and Roma in 5th and 6th, with just a hair's breadth separating them. And we're going to be getting into those 2 teams imminently as well. Finally, in the Bundesliga, Bayern in front. Leverkusen, Frankfurt, Mainz, and Mönchengladbach are your top 5. Heidenheim, Bochum, and Holstein Kiel. My German is lacking these days, but there it is at the bottom of things. Let's look ahead without much further ado, because I've alluded to it multiple times in our games of the week. We start in the Premier League. MGI picked this one, and we're going with it with the Manchester derby between City and United. You chose Fulham and Liverpool for our match of the week. Why?
Well, because both Manchester teams are pretty trash this season.
Yeah.
So I don't find it particularly interesting versus seeing Liverpool inch closer to their title over a very poor Fulham team, but one that's still scrappy and has stolen points where they otherwise likely shouldn't have this season.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be stealing a couple of fullbacks from them at the end of the season. Just you wait. But, yeah, fair to say. I think it will be fun to watch the Reds. It almost always is, unless you're in the Champions League, but there it is. But you can watch the Manchester derby, that match taking place at 11:30 on Sunday, and I believe that is streamable on Peacock if you do have that streaming service. Into the Netherlands, AZ versus Feyenoord, a battle of 3 versus 5. And AZ, should they win, the top 4 gets very, very interesting. Only 3 points separating those two sides. And with the way the Eredivisie is laid out, that's going to get very interesting, not just in terms of playoffs at the end of the year, but also playoffs at the beginning of the year. You're going to learn what that is like, both MG and you watching at home if you don't already know, when we get to the fall. But that is our game of the week for the Netherlands. Italy, tastiest football match of the week, if you ask me. MG, tell us about it, if you would, please.
We've got Roma and Juve, 5th and 6th. 3-point difference from 3rd to 5th place in Serie A. Roma wins. They're in the Champions League contention.
Oh boy. Boy.
It's gonna be very, very interesting result, that one.
I would say Juve, the advantage in attack. Their talent is always top class because you know the kind of money that gets funneled into that organization. I'm looking forward to watching more of Dusan Vlahovic, considering he's probably going to be a Premier League striker next year. But we will see what happens. But then you also have that Juve defense that is starting to age up there. But, I mean, they're not Giorgio Chiellini old, but still. And I think they're going to be pretty vulnerable to a talented, if inconsistent, group of Roma attackers that I think are going to make this a very fun matchup indeed. Make sure you watch that one. Germany is a little bit of a snooze fest. Should be a scrappy side, though. A scrappy battle between Dortmund and Freiburg. 7 versus 10 in the Bundesliga. And then we get into the baseball. CPBL is easy because whenever the Lions and Brothers play each other, it's probably the marquee matchup of the weekend. But we do want to see if the Brothers can find their way into that season-long battle with their bitter rivals, because they started out sluggish against the Lions last weekend. MG, what do we got going on in KBO? Twins versus Tigers. Tell us about it.
Well, we've got past champions duking it out. Tigers had a slow start. The Twins have been very, very hot, so we'll see how that stacks up. Can the Tigers get some rhythm going this season? Or will they fall victim to LG?
Yeah, that very, very potent Twins offense. And when we say that, you know we're talking about a team in Korea and not a team in America. But anyway, and finally, we will wrap it up with the biggest baseball matchup of the weekend. Already, as we start this season, the bitter rivalry. It's at the Tokyo Dome. It is the Giants and the Hanshin Tigers. Giants have started off mighty strong up to this point. They have had some well enough pitching performances, but the hitting has been marvelous. They brought the right foreign players in at the right time, and their domestic stars are also producing at a very high level. Who on earth thought that Taki Akai could actually hit? I always thought he was just a defense-first catcher when he was playing for SoftBank, but he comes over to the Tokyo Dome and suddenly starts raking. So there it is, but they will be going up against the most potent pitching that they have seen up to this point in the season, and especially considering that this is a pitching staff that is coming off 2 shutdown victories in exhibition play, no less, but still 2 exhibition victories, shutout victories over MLB opposition. Hanshin's pitching against Yamayuri's hitting. Not to be missed Friday, Saturday, Sunday, your weekend series in NPB, and those are your ISN games of the week. So as we approach the end of our time together, we got to look ahead for our Grand Prix preview. Honestly, we should just call it the Grand Preview in Japan as we approach the Suzuka circuit, talking more about the emotions going in to the head of Yuki Tsunoda right now. And you've only just started watching MG. I don't know if you've done like a Drive to Survive situation where you've gone back and kind of got caught up on the story of things, but Yuki's been a little bit of a hothead for many, many years, and he's just had middling result after middling result, mid-table result after mid-table result, and now he is probably on, aside from Ferrari, of course, the biggest branded team in F1 finally gets the call up. I'm sure there were a lot of Japanese fans of Red Bull that were pissed off when they didn't get to see Sonoda in the Red Bull livery to start the year. Now they get that chance ahead of Suzuka. What do you think that Yuki's going to do as he takes his place on the grid?
I think that he is going to take seventh.
You're predicting seventh already. Okay.
Yes.
So I mean, yeah, it's it's a good pick, I think. I think you're right. I think finding a way into the points somehow in a very good machine. It's a slower machine, but I mean, it proves that if your name is Max Verstappen, you can get something out of it. But if
Yes.
you have a good qualifying session, anything is possible. So if he keeps his head, he keeps his control, and he's really starting to mature a little bit as he gets older, which he's definitely shown that he has done with his results this year. It could be a very, very special day. It could be a remarkably special day. And honestly, if the Papaya Arrows have a rough qualifying session, we might be talking about a very special result to go along with it. We'll have to see. The one other person I wanted to put under the microscope before we talk about McLaren is Carlos Sainz.
Yeah. God,
What a
what a
rough,
tragic
I
start.
know, just a painful, painful start to his Williams career. And this does seem to be a fairly well built machine. And if you know
Yeah.
Williams, you know what a crazy thing to say that is. But Alexander Albon has gotten plenty out of this car up to this point in the season. He's been logging some very respectable results, especially with the craziness of those two races. But he's good. We know the kind of drives that Carlos is capable of. What's holding him back?
I don't know if I could say that anything is necessarily holding him back, but he or just had a really unfortunate two races.
Well, let's hope you're right.
We'll see. We'll see what happens as the season continues, but I'm not writing him off just yet.
No, I mean, and you definitely can. I mean, the number of times I've heard one or many commentators in the F1 sphere say you can't count out Carlos Sainz. I mean, you really, really can. I mean, this is a multiple race winner, and he's got himself a fast car that he really just seems to be struggling to control. So we'll see if that
Yes.
continues going into the Grand Prix. FP1 in particular on Friday is going to be very, very intriguing. But yes, they can't be avoided because their finishes, they've both traded wins throughout first two races of the season, but the pair of them between them have dominated both of those races. I mean, Oscar felt like he owned Shanghai the minute he set foot on the grid. I mean, he just
Oh,
flew
yeah.
through that course. And then Lando, obviously marvelous in the rain in Melbourne. I mean, do we finally get ourselves a little bit of a 1-2 here?
I think so. I mean, I think at least one of them will podium almost, if not every race this season.
Yeah, yeah. You are speaking my language today, my friend. That is all I will say. But yes, I think that we're not going to see. Obviously, the big talking point around McLaren last year was their strategy hangups. They really bungled a lot of very valuable points for not just for Lando Norris in the Drivers' Championship, but also for themselves and the constructors, even though they did win it. But we're not really going to see what kind of strategic abilities that this team has in the paddock until somebody's able to put them under threat. I don't think this is the weekend that happens. If they have themselves a good qualifying session and they lock out the front row, I mean, we might be talking about a foregone conclusion when it comes to the podium, but if something shaky happens, which at least from them yet, aside from Oscar nearly wiping out but pulling an absolute hero move and getting back in the race in Melbourne, we haven't really seen anything too hairy happen with them yet. Am I wrong about that?
No, I completely agree.
Okay.
And it was really just one bad corner.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. That's crazy to think about. We're going to look back at that race as an absolute classic. But
Oh
McLaren,
yeah.
getting the job done in Shanghai. They are 2 wins from 2. Both of their drivers have wins on the year, and we will see what happens in Japan. That race coming to you from Suzuka, 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. And that is going to bring our time together to a close. But before we do, as promised, MG, we got a little bit of a very interesting hockey weekend happening in England too.
Yes,
So tell
we
us about that, if
do.
you please.
So we'll be saying a lot more about the European leagues next weekend, but
Yes.
or next week. But this weekend in the UK's Elite Ice Hockey League, we have a three-way race for the title with 2 games remaining for each team.
Ooh.
We've got the Belfast Giants in first with 76 points, the Sheffield Steelers just behind at 75, and the Nottingham Panthers rounding it out with 72. And any one of these three could take the title. In fact, the Giants will be playing, or yep, the Giants will be playing the Nottingham Panthers in both of their 2 remaining games.
Oh man,
Yep.
that's juicy.
Uh, Down at the bottom of the table, there's one playoff position up for grabs. The Dundee Stars have 46. They currently occupy that. And behind them with 44 points are the Manchester Storm.
Mm.
There's a lot of very, very fun action happening in the world of British ice hockey this weekend.
And that is why this channel exists. I love to see it. Can't wait to hear more about it next week. So make sure you tune in. We're going to deep dive into European hockey and find out how this crazy regular season will come to an end. Not to be missed programming here on ISN. Speaking of new segments, we got another one coming your way next week too. Think we're going to make some time to do some proper deep dives into topics in future. And so, to go along with talking about hockey, we will be deep diving into the music of Asian baseball.
Excellent.
Didn't really think that music was such a big part of it, though, did you? I know I've sent you some cheer songs and just sort of some other miscellaneous things from NPB. So we're excited to tell you about it as well as initiating MG into some of the bangers in musical history in NPB in particular, but it has always been a factor across the Asian leagues as well. So make sure you tune in next Thursday here on the International Sports Report for deep dives into both of those topics and up to the minute standings in all the leagues that we cover here on this channel. And on top of that, we'll obviously be looking back at the craziness of the Japanese Grand Prix because it's F1 and there is no such thing as a normal race. So, without much further ado, please do like and share this video if you enjoyed it, and make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon down below the video screen to be notified every single time we bring you a new episode of this show or something else in the future here on the International Sports Network. Let us know down in the comments, was this a good decision by Red Bull to get rid of Liam Lawson so quickly? And I want to know if there are any other European hockey fans out there. So give us a shout out in the comments. Let us know what team you're following over there in the European leagues as we get to the playoffs of hockey season and the business end of baseball season. For Matthew Giesecke and Marshall Emmert, thank you very much for watching the International Sports Report, the flagship program here on ISN, and we will see you next time. But for now, that's the game. Take care.